Well, the my first encounter with Dutch was I don't know exactly what year. It was the mid '80s or early to mid '80s. I had not published a novel. I published short stories and poems, but I was really interested in mystery novels, and I was teaching at FIU, Florida International University in Miami, where I was for 40 years. But um, I was teaching a mystery novel class, and I had been reading Elmore Leonard on the weekends as a sort of guilty pleasure, while I was teaching the highbrow literary stuff during the week. And so this mystery novel class was kind of recreation for me, and fun teaching. And one of the books I taught in that class was La Brava, which I dearly loved to begin with. I've always loved and reread it many times. Anyway, so I'd never done this before, but I wrote him a fan letter, and somehow it got to him. It reached him. And what I said in my letter was a sort of outgrowth of the class, because we did a kind of academic examination of La Brava. And one of the things we saw, or maybe I saw, I don't know if the students did or not, was an image pattern. There was like black and white almost on every page or every other page, black and white photographs, black and white film, black and white characters, just the actual use of black and white, those words. And so, anyway, in my um, idolizing fanboy letter to him, I mentioned that I had taught this book in my class, and that we really admired a lot of things about the book, but in particular, we liked the image patterns. And lo and behold, he wrote me back. It was a little postcard, but I could not believe it. It tracked me down somehow. And he said, thanks very much. I'm really happy to hear that your students and you like the books, but I probably wouldn't do very well in your class because I have no idea what an image pattern is. And this was my introduction, sort of my slap down, come on, academic. This is not something that real novelists care too much about, all this intellectualizing stuff, which was a very good kind of introduction to Dutch. And it was proved to be accurate, and it was duplicated many times. That same kind of pattern of his point of view and his sort of wry but kind and gentle and sweet upbraiding of me. I saw that over and over again over the years, and deeply appreciated that aspect of him very much as a personality. There were some other episodes that I'm happy to recount. The the next one is, I realized at a certain point, after having written three or four novels, and they were all rejected, and I got increasingly good rejection letters, but still they were rejection letters. So I realized, or I thought to myself, I'm just too dumb to do this. So I'm going to have to do something that's more, I'm going to have to use a crutch to get this, to write a book that's worthy. So I took one of his books, I won't name which book it was, and I analyzed it chapter by chapter. I just took the first chapter and did this sort of stupid and simple analysis. How many characters does the first chapter have? How many pages does it have? How much scene or how much setting is there? How much action is there? How much dialogue is there? How much character backstory? Is there everything that I could think of that was descriptive of how a narrative could go? I broke it down and used Dutch's first chapter as my model. In other words, I kind of plagiarized not his words or his ideas or his style or anything like that, but the structure that he had been using in that opening chapter. And when I did that, I wrote the first chapter using all those stipulations on my own book. And I got to the end of the first chapter and I thought, I like this. This is pretty good. So I did the same thing again on the second chapter of Dutch's book, and then, stole all that stuff, the structure stuff, for my story. I did that again and again for like four chapters. And by the time I got to 4 chapters, maybe 50 pages or something like that into the manuscript, I was off to the races. I was on my own. It was like he supplied the sort of lift off and breaking free of gravity, and then the story wrote itself. I finished that novel. It was Under Cover of Daylight, it became my first novel, published in, I think, 87, 88. But I could not have done that. I could not have written that book or published that book had I not used his structure as a crutch. And I mean, people look at his work, and they talk about, his style, his voice, the things that are unique about him, and point those things out. But the fact is, his stories were very, very carefully crafted. The narrative structure was definitely there. He wouldn't like me saying this. It's like the image pattern thing. He wouldn't like me saying this, but it's true. I don't know whether this was instinctive on his part, or whether he spent time developing this, or it was trial and error, or what. But there was a very smart and well-crafted structure underlying, I think, all the novels in one way or another. The other crucial thing, and I'm happy to go off in different directions here, but these are sort of 3 things that got me sort of connected to Dutch in a way that is links him to my DNA as a writer. Years after I published 1 or 2, 3 novels, I guess, by this time, and I had met him in passing by then, just to say hello, or we were on the same interview show where I spent 5 minutes talking to him at the beginning, and then we went on our merry way. And then all of a sudden, one day, 3rd novel had been published by Knopf, and they were not interested in a 4th novel. So I was sort of on my own, and a little scared that my career was over. And I got a phone call from him out of the blue. I don't know how he got my phone number. He has his ways. But he called me and said, I was like shocked to be talking to him on the phone. And he said, you've got, after the sort of social conversation, he said, I wanted to let you know that you've got some real fans at Delacorte, where he was being published at that time. And this is something that I didn't know, and that my literary agent didn't know. And so, when I finished that phone call, I called my agent and told him this. And so he went over to Delacorte, and then like a few days later, we got this very good deal with Delacorte that I stayed with for years after that. And it was like a major turn in my career that, it was partly that an aspect of Dutch, that he was generous, kind, helpful, to other writers. I mean, a lot of writers would see that as not their job to pass on that sort of information. But Dutch had a very, very generous, good spirit. And it really he changed my life, both in the structure part and the writing part and in the career part in a major way.
Talk a little bit about, I mean, you can go back to any point you want, but I mean, when we were all together in Mantua, and what kind of an experience was that to be there with Dutch and with who's there like Conley, Craze, and
Which place? Wait, which place was that?
in Italy.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh, yes.
it was outside of Bologna, but we remember meeting you at the I don't know, it was at the train station or something. We saw each other because we knew
Yeah.
each other. We had seen each other at like places like Books and Books, and and
Yeah. Right. No, oh, yeah, that's a vivid, vivid memory. Having dinner with him, hanging out with him, going to the presentation where he got an award. Just being in that environment, I think uh, there
was
were a bunch of really good writers there at the same time.
Lahane, Pelicanos, Craze,
Yeah,
and there was another big writer. I can't remember his name, but he wasn't on any program. But it was just incredible.
yeah. No, it was that's true, and there were the other writers. I think in situations like that. Where the other writers sort of hold Harlan Coben, he was
Oh,
there too.
Coben, yes, indeed, yes.
He was there too. You know, writers like that were more holding forth and carrying the conversation. I'm thinking of a particular dinner that we had, that you were at that dinner, and Harlan was there, and several other writers was there, and I noticed that in the midst of that, Dutch Dutch was very quiet, reserved, but if he said anything, which was rare, I mean, in a situation like that, he wasn't that like socially talkative in that situation. But if he said anything, everybody shut up and listened to what he had to say. He had such respect and um, I mean, they were those writers who were immensely successful financially and publishing numbers and all that. Um, I think they realized they were in the presence of someone who was uniquely gifted and different than they were, and it was fun to watch him in that environment. It was fun to hang out with him in a kind of unstructured, not literary, not a lot of fans there taking his time, although there was part of that was involved in that conference. But he navigated that very, very well, better than I will in that situation. It was fun. That was fun. That was a real blast.
But Dutch, like he has, benefited so much from different people in the business, like Otto Penzler, for example, you know, who got him into writing short stories. I mean, he had written short stories, of course, westerns, and
Yeah.
then he wrote uh, Town of Woman and Hooray for Captain Early. But then Otto would have these. You've probably written for some of Otto's themed anthologies, uh,
Yeah, I
uh,
have. Right.
and but it just brought him out in some of his best work. He was really. I mean, people don't necessarily know what a great short story writer he was.
Right. Oh no, it's true. It's and I think that's part of what I discovered over time with being around him is that the novels weren't. necessarily his natural um, place to be. I think in some ways, short stories were more his like poetry, the place that he could pour a certain quality of his writing into those short stories. And I think a lot of that has to do with the influence of Hemingway that had on him, because there's clearly, Hemingway was a great novelist, but he was also, before he was a great novelist, primarily a great short story writer. And I think the influence that Hemingway had on Dutch, in lots of different ways, but stylistically, that sort of very withheld, very shorthand way of writing, that really soars in short stories. It becomes extraordinary, where 15 pages can seem like 500, because it's so concentrated, and so every sentence matters and every dialogue exchange matters. And I think that's a huge part of what I learned about him in the long run, is the short story skills that he had. I didn't see that at the beginning because I just knew about the novels, but yeah, he was a gifted short story writer.
Well, his final uh, published work um, was a short story that he wrote for the Atlantic called Iceman, which, you know, kind of like was prophetic, but he was, he really struggled with his his unfinished final novel, and he only got to, about page 86. Uh, but there's so many things were going on, personally, and delays and things. But and he had all these ideas for this book, and normally he would just knock it off in like 5 or 6 months continuous, but he didn't have that. He had, there was too much going on, in his personal life, that like kept him from having that, being able to sit down every day in that same way. But he had all these ideas, and then when the Atlantic called, he just was overjoyed, because he could knock it out quickly. He could get to it quick. It's not like short stories are not something that you labor over
Right.
indefinitely. Well,
Yeah.
I probably would.
Yeah. They can take a lot of time sometimes, but yeah, I can see how he would be. It is sort of his like perfect sweet spot for the kind of writing he could do. Because, like I was saying about the novels, there's a structure there. The novels are this big, building. Uh, uh, a short story is more like, a temporary encampment. It's, you can slap it up quickly, but it can be beautiful and profound, which I think his short stories frequently were. Again, a lot like Hemingway's. So yeah, Otto's influence and all of that, I know, was also huge. That he brought him along in some ways and steered him into the mystery world, which Otto has done with so many writers, including myself, that a lot of us have Otto to thank for much of our careers and what we understand to be mystery thriller novels, and meeting other people in the world. So many people, in fact, that I know that are in the mystery field, have the Dutch as an intersection, that we overlap. James Bourne, all kinds of people that that I know,
Yeah,
um, have a debt to both Otto and Elmore.
but the interesting thing about the series of short stories that he wrote for Otto was that, you know, Karen Makes Out. that became out of sight. That was like he was auditioning, Karen Cisco,
Yeah.
and the storyline involving the well, it was a different kind of timeout with well, she wasn't really a timeout with the bank robber. It was like her bank robber was her boyfriend, and when she realized that, she shot him. But and then like Chickasaw Charlie Hoke, that was a character in Chishmingle Blues that he got, in Otto's book. I think it was called Murder and Baseball.
Yeah.
And,
Uh,
and Dutch would very seldom. I mean, if you gave him instructions, he would very often just go ahead and do whatever. You wrote, did you write I can't remember. I'm ashamed of myself, but did you write a chapter for Naked Came the Manatee?
oh yeah, yeah, I did. I was there. I think I was chapter 5 or something like that.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
It was that was an amazing event. He
It
was in
was
that, right?
huh?
He
Oh
he
yeah.
he had, he had a
He
chapter.
had the penultimate chapter with the
Oh,
finale with Carl Hyacin getting the finale. But
yeah.
his whole attitude was that I'm just going to write a short story like I want. And so he was interested in fatality cleanup.
Oh,
And that
that's
was the
right. Ah, yes, I remember now. Yes.
and that was some fun research. I mean, I don't want to be morbid about it, but they wouldn't really say what exactly. They wouldn't say what the chemicals were exactly that they used to get brain fragments off of walls. But
But
and then I
that's
said, and he didn't he made, well, I shouldn't say he made me, it's my job, but I read all of the previous entries. He didn't read any of them. And when he was on Charlie Rose with Carl and Dave Barry, Charlie called him on that and said he didn't read it. He pleaded the fifth, but
that's
it was
good.
just, he just thought it was just, dumb fun. But it was anything that could bring that many writers together, in such a
Yeah,
way.
we did a signing, a group signing. I don't think Dutch was involved with that. It was
Yeah,
on.
he was. I think
He
he
was. He was
was.
there. It was on
Yeah.
Lincoln Road Mall in Miami Beach, and there were 1,000 people. People flew in from California, from Alaska, all over the place because there were all these people there. They could get signatures on. It
Yeah.
was. We were there for hours, and
I have a copy. I have a copy. It's in the archive now, but of all 13 signatures.
that
Yeah.
was that was an amazing, an amazing event. Oh,
Well, I mean,
geez.
you combine Elmore Leonard and all you other guys with Dave Barry, who was super hot then and a TV star,
Yeah,
wasn't he, by that time? He
yeah.
had
Oh,
a
yeah,
TV.
for sure.
Um, but
Unfortunately, I was sitting next to Dave and Carl during the signing, and they had these lines that were 500 people long, and I'm like 20 people, and it was like a humiliation exercise, cutting your ego down to size. But it was an event like no other event I've ever seen in my life, where so many good writers and so many people came to see them at the same time. It was funny. But, I do remember that he was actually auditioning for that cleanup, the murder cleanup stuff that he used later, that you did the research for, right? I mean, he didn't just use it that one time.
I think well, I don't think he didn't really have a I mean, he may have used some elements of it, but it wasn't like a profession,
Yeah,
that was followed. It was just
yeah.
in that, and yeah, there were several outfits that specialized in that. Uh,
That's another thing that I always admired about him. That I tried to do this myself, and I see how hard it is. incorporating all that research and information into the story and not having it clog things up. I'm sure, you gave him all this stuff, this great
Too much,
information.
actually.
Well, I'm sure cool details, but he knew how to sift through all that and use it here and use it there. Like a good chef, you don't use too much spice in that, you spoil the whole recipe. And it was like he had this great array of information before him, but he knew how to distribute it well in the stories. They never seem clogged. You never go like, oh, here's a whole paragraph or a whole page or two about research.
Well,
It was never that.
the only book where critics called out the research in a negative way was Be Cool, where they called it a research dump because he really did not know. I mean, he's a good mimic, but the music biz, just the inside out of the music biz, just kind of he just drop things in, and I go, oh shit, I gave that to him. That was my,
That was
um,
your fault, Greg.
right, but no, well, like he was a great researcher. That's the thing, that's why he could have a researcher. And let's face it, everybody in his life, one way or another, was a researcher for him, or
Sure.
that came, and that's true of all of us. I mean,
Yeah.
every writer. I mean, you're listening. You learn from, like, one time he was at the opera, but he hated the opera. I mean, he didn't hate it, but he just would rather be watching the ball game at home or something. And it's intermission, and he's talking to the guy next to him, and he goes, well, what do you do for a living? And the guy goes, well, I'm a Bull Seaman salesman.
Oh
And
no.
that's going in. That's gotta go in.
Of course.
Mr. Paradise. I mean, it was a small thing, but it's all
Yeah,
those details, add up. And
that's great.
but he he was working. I mean, the novels, the novels from the 2000s. I mean, I don't know, like, if you look at how you look at a writer's life in terms of, if or a musical group. I mean, if you're like a Rolling Stones fan, you don't say, well, such and such an album sucked. You go in for but they did this. I mean, even if you
Yeah.
have a few clunkers, and you're Elmore Leonard, I mean, even his clunkers are, well, I won't call them that, but I mean, even ones that are less than stellar, let's say, like would be better than most. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
but um, it was just he would always say it doesn't get any easier. Do you think it gets easier?
Oh, hell no. No, it gets harder. And, that's the other thing that when you were talking about research, I was thinking there's different kinds of research and the kinds, there's the information and details and factual information that the bull semen stuff, and the cleaning up murder scenes stuff. But there's also the kind of information research that he did that has to do with audio stuff of listening to people and hearing the pattern of people's voices, the rhythm of speech. I mean, to me, that sets him apart. Even though there is this Hemingway connection with him, Hemingway's dialogue is, kind of wooden in the long term, where Dutch had the research that he did, the audio research of listening to how people talk and being able to mimic that so well in prose was, I think, the thing that sets him apart from almost everybody. George V. Higgins was great, but I think Dutch was better with dialogue. I would have gladly read a Dutch Leonard novel that was all dialogue, that was just nothing but two people or three people or four or how many ever talking to each other, because he could nail that again and again and again, bring out the emotions of people, revelations about their personalities, their psyches, whatever. He was just great, and it was dramatic at the same time. The way he could create tension in dialogue. I don't see anybody that can do that the way he did it.
But yet, if you really had to, like, at a molecular level, describe it, you can't, right?
No, 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 no. It's something else. It's I guess you could artificial intelligence could probably analyze it and tell you exactly what makes that dialogue unique, but it's beyond my capabilities. It's
I wanted to,
beyond.
wanted to do some kind of like a whimsical, humorous piece about what Dutch would think of AI.
That's good. You should do that. You should do that. Uh,
You know, you say you'd run like a couple of paragraphs of his best work through AI and just see what it ended up mashing it up into, like ridiculousness. But
yeah, you could do that. You could take a sentence or two, or you don't even have to do that. I've tried this with Dutch actually, and told of various AI, Chat GPT or Perplexity, the ones that I use, say write a scene that's a sex scene or a scene of a bank robbery in the style of, and then I will do Elmore Leonard, or I'll sometimes do myself and see what it comes up with. And it's so bad.
it is bad.
I'm grateful to say it's got a long way to go before it catches up to the rest of us.
One of the, well, I always said that I was, or I didn't say this, but he would say this, that basically that I was his computer because he hated, well, I didn't, he had no use for computers. He didn't believe in computers. I mean, he would believe in the Easter Bunny before he would believe in a computer. It just did. One time I think we were watching maybe Jeopardy or something. You're sitting on, like I'm trying to like slip in some work, some research, and which was really not, you were in that room, over in the corner where the TV was, and
Yeah.
it was just a cool spot. And like I just wanted to show him something on my laptop, and so I put my laptop on his lap, and he couldn't get it off his lap fast enough.
Of course, that's yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
but but really, in a way, I was like, for me, a chat GPT, in if you're just trying to break something down, if you're trying to, like, I write, for my Substack, I write, I will transcribe, the computer transcribes the video, let's say, and then I'll just say, I'll put that in chat GPT and say, write an introduction, write a 100-word introduction or something. But invariably it uses these most ridiculous, like it's like the guy at a it's like the guy that's trying to be your friend, or a guy at a party that's a socially awkward kind of thing. But it helps you realize what you don't want to say, what
yes.
like, and in a way you end up coming up with what you say to and I swear at the thing all the time. Well, why don't you do this? Oh, good idea, Greg. You know,
Yeah, that is the way it's useful, that you can see how to measure yourself off against its failures. But unfortunately, I'm afraid it's going to get better and better as the years go on, and we're gonna be not
the
laughing too
arts.
much.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah,
Right now, it
it's
sounds like the conversation written by Mark Zuckerberg, or one of those guys that is socially awkward and can't really put three sentences together in a smooth and efficient way.
and there are all these tells, like, like if you're writing an email, I hope this email finds you well. If you ever hear that at the beginning, and then somebody else told me that that the M dash is a sheer giveaway. If you see a lot of M dashes in your writing,
Oh yeah, real well. Hey,
but um, but what I mean, like, let's not consider this technological nightmare of a future, but just in terms of the literature of 20th century literature and today. I mean, where do you think Dutch fits in today? I mean, if you were teaching today, I mean, frame? Would you how would you frame his work?
yeah, that's a really good question, and it is one that I've thought a lot about. I just think he is going to be um, thought of in the long term as separate and above the kind of Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, Ross McDonald, the more pure detective mystery thriller writers, crime writers, and certainly apart from the existing motley crew of today, he is, I think, has really unique position long term, partly because of his evolution from writing, the Western work that he did early. So many of his work novels made it into films, some of them okay, but all of them interesting in some way or another. So I think he's going to be one of those people that's going to stand on the on a position that's different than anybody else, unique position. He's not going to be competing with the John Updikes and Saul Bellows and Nobel Prize winner purely literary writers, because that's a world unto itself. But I think he's always going to have a unique position that's above the genre in general, and apart from the literary fussiness that gives Nobel Prizes and National Book Awards and that sort of thing. He's the writer that most writers would like to be, I think.
Okay,
And
that I'm gonna lose you in 1 second. I want to say goodbye and thank you very much for this interview. But that you said it.